a lot to break down with this Utah team. Now, Joe, they're in the Big 12 now, and I got to be honest with you. I think this is the sneakiest pickup that nobody's talking about from a football perspective. Let me say why. Joe, you have a multi Pac-12 champion winner. You know, we talk about Oregon, we talk about USC, we talk about UCLA, all the big markets, right? We talk about Washington. You know who we never talk about in any of this is Utah. They don't get the love that they deserve. Let's look at them now into the Big 12, which might be the easy. I keep saying that word easy, the least competitive to win. And Utah comes in and probably Joe is going to be a top 2 to top team in that conference. I guess when you look at Utah, what do you see?
Let me correct you on least competitive because I don't think that's what you mean. I think that what you're trying to say here is
good point.
There's less of an obvious pick of who's winning the division. Like there's no juggernaut. There's an opportunity for a couple of teams to battle it out. That's I think what you're trying to say, right? There's no Ohio State, there's no Georgia, there's no Florida State, there's none of that.
I mean, to some extent, I can't believe I'm about to say this. To some extent, they were the Pac-12's version.
Yes.
You know, and they're going into the Big 12. But I mean, look, if Kansas State is my toughest opponent, sign me up.
And they don't even play Kansas State this upcoming year.
Right.
So that's the interesting part. They wouldn't face them until the Big 12 championship game, theoretically, kind of based on what we've been projecting here. But there's a clip floating out there of us talking about during conference realignment. I went as far as to say that I thought that Utah was the most perfect team that landed in the best.
Wait, another clip?
No. I'm saying that like we posted last summer during realignment, I posted a clip of us saying that we thought that Utah, and I particularly thought that Utah being in the Big 12 was a perfect fit for how they run their program, how they play the game of football, and all the teams that they're going to be facing. They're going to be the most defensively sound team in the conference every single year that Kyle Whittingham is there. And that's something that a lot of the Big 12 teams historically have lacked. It's been a lot of offensive juice. I look at Oklahoma State as a great example where they're going to put points up on the board, but God forbid, goddamn, their secondary is not going to stop anybody like they did in the Big 12 championship game. But Utah is losing a lot defensively this year. We can trust Kyle Whittingham to get his guys right, but losing Sione Vaki, losing Cole Bishop, who's a star defensive back, and then one of the biggest sack getters this past season in Jonah Ellis, it's a lot to replace. That's where my eyes immediately go to when I look at this team.
The only thing that I would say beyond that, okay, is they still have a lot of seniority returning. They also still have a shitload of production returning.
Yeah.
Joe, I look at this defense. Look, if we're going to start off there, let's start off with the defense. Look, Van Fillinger, okay, had 8 sacks the last 2 years, 20 tackles for loss. Joe, you can't replace that experience the last 2 years. All right, Junior Tafanu, okay, had 4.5 sacks last year. He's going to try to get back to that 21 production. Excuse me, he had that in 2021. He has not been good the last 2 years. Can he get back to that production we saw in 2021? Connor O'Toole is somebody, and what a hell of a name, O'Toole, okay? I think it's someone that's very interesting, and let me explain why. Joe, you have right there 20 sacks within the last, guys that have produced within 20 sacks the last couple of years. They are losing a lot of production. I'm not worried about them defensively. Of the 11 starters, 7 guys are seniors that are starters. 7, okay? Then they're bringing in another guy, okay, and Kenneth Johnson from Georgia Tech, who is going into his senior year. So that would make 8 guys that are going to be seniors. Joe, what do we see in college football? I talk about this all offseason. Utah is usually the team that starts this off. Teams that have experience normally win close games. And I think in a conference like that, when experience is going to matter, defensively, they're going to be fine. Here's the problem that I have, okay? They have and this is, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I don't know how to explain it other than just saying it. These guys that are here, though, have had reduction in production. How about that? How about that rhyme? Call me Dr. Seuss. So I am interested. I'm never worried about Utah on defense, ever. Joe, that many seniors, that much experience on the field, 22, 23, 24-year-old guys going up against 18, 19-year-olds is going to prevail. I don't think that that's my question with them. Yeah. I never really worry about them when it comes to defense. The only thing I would say is when you do lose production, it does hurt. But Kyle Whittingham has always proven that he can get his defense back right.
I stand with you on that. I mostly just brought up those guys leaving because
they're
notable.
Don't misunderstand what I'm saying.
It's a big deal. Right.
But let me just say it like this. You tell any other team that has college football playoff aspirations that in with 3 defensive linemen that they're bringing back 20 sacks in the last 2 years. I think that they're really going to enjoy that, right? Like, and by the way, those 20 sacks are coming from guys. By the way, O'Toole, I think, was a receiver when he came in. Or was it him or was it Ken Reed? I can't remember. But one of these guys, I think it might have been O'Toole, was a receiver, was recruited as a receiver. So you're talking about guys that are coming in. Joe, name another team that has that type of reduction from their 2s.
Right. So that's the big part here where they're a deep roster that has churned out a lot of guys. And Kyle Whittingham is like the Western version of Kirk Ferentz in just being able to find production and develop guys that were 3 stars and turning them into stars. They don't need to be like Georgia or Alabama in order to put together really well-coached, hard-nosed, physical defenses. So despite losing those players, they're still stepping into a conference that even if they do or miss out on some of the talents of guys like Vaki and Cole Bishop, they're still going to be more physical than most of the defenses in the Big 12. But one thing that does stand out to me why I feel really good about Utah, I mentioned Cam Rising, him being as old as he is and having this experience. He's the oldest man in college football. It feels like he's been around for a million years. Looks like he's coming off of his job in corporate finance, how old he looks to walk onto the field to go play. He is going to have really good options to throw to. I think that they have a better situation on offense than they've had in the past couple of years. I look at the fact that they added Dorian Singer, who was really good at Arizona 2 years ago, didn't really mesh well.
1,100 yards, man, was very productive.
Yes. Didn't mesh well at USC because there were just so many other guys to get the ball to that he kind of fell into the mix.
Yep.
Karen Ryan from UCLA, the tight end, is a very quality player that is going to be a nice piece alongside Brant Keithy, who we talked about in our tight end show. This is the underrated one, though. This is the one that I think midway through the season, people are going to be saying, who the heck is this kid? Anthony Woods, who transferred from Idaho, had 16 touchdowns in 2023 for the Idaho Vandals. He is somebody who, when I was watching FCS games last year, we said this about Taj Brooks. He is a run through your face dude. He will run a motherfucker over. He is that type of a guy, and the physicality that he is going to be bringing to this Utah run game, despite them losing Jaquindon Jackson, I think is going to really, really stand out for them early on this season.
So you brought up their wide receiver room, and I don't think that there's a better name in college football when it comes to a receiver than Money Parks, okay? 719 yards the last 2 years and 4 touchdowns. I agree with you, and bringing in Singer I think is a big deal. I actually liked him a lot better now than I did any part of last year, okay, because of Cam Rising returning. Joe, it's a massive deal. Overly massive deal. I can't believe I'm going to say this. Utah's got weapons. Like,
so that's where I'm coming back with this. Is like, wait a minute. You do the notes and you pull everything together, and it's like there's actually some juice here. This isn't Iowa. This is some juice.
Like, bro, I know that they're playing in the Big 12, and we'll talk about the Big 12 in a minute. You 1,000% sure that they couldn't make a little bit of a run in a playoff? With right seeding. Let me give an example.
Yeah.
If they played,
say they had an 8-9 matchup and they played like
Missouri
or Penn State.
Oh, they're kicking the dog shit out of Penn State.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that when I looked at, by the way, Micah Pittman's there. Micah Pittman's been, By the way, Michael Pittman was a freshman when that guy behind me, Joe Burrow, won a Heisman. Okay, he started his career at Oregon in 2019. Okay, so not only do they have weapons, they got experience all over the place.
The age that they have sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. The age that they have, they could.
They're the oldest. They might be the oldest team by a long shot.
They could staff a whole floor at like a corporate business with how old some of these guys are. These aren't interns. These are grown men that have been working for multiple years. How old some of these guys are.
No doubt. I want to get to Cam Rising in just a moment because I want to say this before we get to him. There is one massive thing that I'm very worried about: their offensive line. And I know that people are going to disagree with me. Joe, your left tackle is going to be a redshirted freshman. Yeah. You got a lot of inexperience along that offensive line. You're going into a conference like, look, man, week 2, you got Dave Aranda. Now, Dave is coaching for his ever-living life, and they're going to throw a lot at you. Look, man, you're playing Oklahoma in Stillwater, okay? I know for a fact that Gundy is going to throw the kitchen sink at you. By the way, the week after that, you got Arizona. So you look at the Big 12 and you say, okay, you know what it is. It's not like an SEC or Big 10 type of schedule, but they're not like sugar-coated games. I do think that they go and as Cam Rising goes, because he's going to have to take his game to another level, because I think the offensive line, for what it is not going to be good early. I think they can get better later in the season. But here's the thing with this. This team is going to go as he goes. And I know, well, Blake, he's a quarterback, of course. No. They are a playoff or bust. And if he comes back to the version that we saw a couple years ago, they're going to win the conference. The thing with him is, Joe, when you have a bad offensive line, he hadn't taken a hit in a year. How much rust does he have? How does he look? How is he moving? How mobile is he? So as much as I love Cam Rising, as much as I think he's our college version of Gardner Minshew, okay, I do think there are some worries for me. Yeah. Now, I do have a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Faith in him that he's going to do the right thing and make the right play. But I'm very hesitant. I just don't like when a guy is supposed to be back, then he misses a year. Like how?
But his timeline to return, that was Whittingham, and I think he just deserves a lot of credit for the way that he handled it.
Well, he didn't rush it, and I understand.
Well, he also screwed with every single opponent that they had, of saying like, he's throwing in warm-ups.
Okay, is he
playing today?
Hold on now. That's true, but let's say this though, because we had this discussion last week. Everybody tried to tell me, well, ACL tears are different than Blake when you played. Joe, he was beyond a year. He's been beyond a year. As someone who faced 2 of them, didn't he not tear his ACL?
He did, but I'm trying to remember. So he tore it at the very end of the season.
Yeah, he tore it in the bowl game.
January. So January to what was September?
6 months is June. 8 months is August. Right? Like, no,
that's a good point.
9 months is September. Like, so what happened? Now, I will say this. It does not bother me that he missed all of last year with an ACL. I think it's people react completely different to situations. I just, you cannot. I'm going to use 2 negatives, so my mom's going to be mad. You can't not talk about it. You can't not.
Yeah,
you can't not put it in there and say, hey, this may be an issue. Here's the thing, though. Joe, I look at the schedule. They do have some pretty tough opponents. I think people are sleeping on Arizona. I think people are sleeping on Oklahoma State, considering who they are.
Okay.
Right? Like, they could go to Stillwater and lose.
Well, okay. So the thing with the Big 12, and this goes right back to the way that we started the segment, saying that there is no juggernaut. And that to me means you don't have to run the table, go 12-0, and especially now in 2024 with the expanded playoff, 10-2 is what the goal is to win the Big 12 this upcoming year. Mm-hmm. You go into the Big 12 championship game, you're the second team in the conference at 10-2. You win the game, you go to the playoff. That's what the goal is now. That's what the approach is. I mean, you pointed out the only 2 games that actually like caught my eye they play mostly the back end weak part of their schedule, and then they're non-conference. They don't play anyone tough now. It was Southern Utah.
I don't like going to Houston against Willie Fritz.
Dude, I'm not. Look, Willie Fritz, I think, is going to be a tremendous coach. I said this when we did our first year expectations for him, but that roster was not recruited well by Dana Holgerson, and it's going to take him some time. He is a slow grinder builder of a coach.
Willie Fritz always has that one game, though.
But did he have that one game in his first year at Tulane? No, he didn't.
Yeah, it was Ole Miss.
They didn't beat Ole Miss his first year.
No, but they got it within a touchdown.
Okay, my point is that I'm trying to get at here.
By the way, he had a ketchup packet at quarterback. He had some a piece of a hot dog at wide receiver. He had Vienna sausage along his offensive line. They sucked.
I will say Donovan Smith is. I want to watch his film and break it down for the 2025 draft class. He's on my list. Some people swear by him that he's supposed to be like really freaking good. So maybe Fritz is able to get that out of him.
We'll see. Yeah.
Oklahoma State and Arizona, though, I think are the two landmines. Worst comes to worst, you lose both of those games and you don't play well in both those games. Their schedule is very favorable for them to go 10-2 and to make the Big 12
after Arizona. I mean, you got Arizona State. I mean, what is TCU? You know, like, I mean, did they bounce back? I mean, like, what happens there? At Houston, BYU. Now that's a rivalry game, and anything happens in rivalry games.
Did you know that? I didn't know this till today. On Bet Online, BYU has the lowest odds.
Yep.
To win the Big 12.
Yep.
Which makes sense.
Well, they're replacing a lot. At Colorado, blah. I'm going to throw our buddy Josh Pate a bone here. You don't have any faith in Iowa State?
That was another one. I forgot to write that down. Iowa State is another one which I think we should do a preview for. They're a sneaky good team.
I agree.
For next season. Like they could be that Texas Tech this year. Matt Campbell finds a way.
Don't say Texas Tech. Why are you going to say Texas Tech? We propped up Texas Tech, and week 1, Wyoming kicked that ass. Which, by the way, you know what's ironic?
Yeah.
Wyoming actually wasn't that bad.
Wyoming was good last year, but it's still it's a G5. It's a G5 team. You shouldn't lose to a G5 team if you're Texas Tech. But Iowa State, that's another one. I don't see them going 0-3 in those tough matchups on their schedule. They're going to go 2-3 the way that I see it, and I think it's an 11-1, 10-2 season.
The only team that I'm going to give a hot take out here for you. Here's the team that I think surprises people. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Arizona. Now, people would say, "Oh, well, Blake, how's it going to surprise me?" Well, you got a new coaching staff. Joe, are you seeing what they're doing in the portal? I mean, hey,
they lost a lot of guys in the portal too. I mean, that's kind of by necessity.
True. But I know what they have a receiver. I know what they have a quarterback. I know what they're returning at running back, which we need to get to about running back here in just a minute. So we'll see. But you're not worried about Utah running back? I know you brought up I know you brought up that other kid earlier, but you're not worried about that? I mean, look, they have literally no P4 true production at that position.
That's true, but they're also a team that's been successful at just finding that next running back.
Not in big games. Joe, I could make the argument. Last year when they had
Jackson have a huge game against USC.
Okay, against the worst defense in the country in the P5. Okay, sure. But against other teams like Oregon State and others, when they had a competent Joe, I'm just going to tell you, Oklahoma State's going to be competent defensively, more than competent defensively.
Probably.
Okay? And with that being said, you know who else I think is going to be more than competent? Iowa State.
Yeah, they're always good defensively. They run that 3-3-5 stack like it's,
So I bring up the question. That question, like Joe, when they play tough defenses or a little bit above average defenses, they struggled last year, and they try to get the pig farmer out there to try to throw the football all over the place, and it didn't work. Which by the way, shout out to the pig farmer.
Yeah, shout out. I don't know where he ended up. I think he transferred, but okay, but
to that point, where he transferred? FarmersOnly.com, Farmers Only University.
That was a terrible joke.
I'm a dad. That's what I'm supposed to do.
You
know when you become a dad that the nurses give you a thing of white New Balances and some tube socks.
Yeah, I hope you don't own that. I hope you got a little bit more juice than wearing New Balances around. But
don't you tempt me. By the way, I do wear New Balances. Stylish New Balances.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure they're the real. I know that there's some good New Balances. I'm hoping that those are the ones you're wearing. But okay, to get back to this point here, they had trouble running the football for the obvious reason that you just brought up. Teams were not. No, the teams weren't afraid of Bryson Barnes, so they said, "All right, we're going to make things as living hell as possible for you, trying to pick up yards on the ground."
You can't do that to Cam Rising, buddy.
That's the whole point here. Cam Rising is the king of play action, setting up the run game, setting up the offense to succeed. This team, you don't need a Jaquindon Jackson. You don't need Sione Vaki to step in and make these big splash plays like they did last year when they called on them to do so. I don't think you need a premier guy. Cam Rising is going to get that out of the rest of the team.
I think that's very fair. What's crazy, man, I can't believe that, offensively, they're going to be so much better than they were a year ago, which is a little bit scary for teams. Like, look, man, their floor was a walk-on quarterback going in there last year, and they won 9 games.
Yeah. And that should be all the more positivity that you need.
And here's the thing. They're returning a lot and adding a lot, okay? So the crazy thing, Joe, is that their floor?
Well, that's what I'm getting at.
Like, is their floor when all shit breaks loose?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I can make the argument that the Pac-12 was the second best conference in the country last year.
It was the second best.
I mean, it wasn't the Big Ten.
It wasn't the Big Ten because it was 2 teams. It was a 2-team race.
And you know what? I could make the argument that the best team in the SEC didn't make the playoff.
Yeah, you could argue that the Pac-12 might have been the best conference last year. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, because Georgia would have dog smoked Washington and Oregon.
Yeah.
They would have dog smoked Washington.
Yeah, I don't know why I took so long. I was taking a pause because I was trying to think like.
And Joe, you know what's crazy? You know what's crazy? I'm not 1,000% sure. I mean, and let me ask you this: was Michigan's toughest opponent was Alabama? And you know what's crazy? What's crazy about that? We kind of poo-poo on Jalen Milroe and that Alabama team last year. Joe, they took Michigan to the freaking wire.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Long story short, if that's their floor, good luck, bucko.
Make sure you check out Bet Online for all of your sports betting needs. For anything that I do betting related, I go on over to betonline.ag and I use promo code BELIEVE50. BetOnline has all of the latest updated odds for the NFL and college football seasons. Anything you need, whether it's futures, live in-game betting, no matter what, your football betting needs are met at BetOnline. And again, make sure you use that promo code BELIEVE50, BLEAV50 to get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts.